I installed a hidden camera in the house and caught my girlfriend cheating. Where the F do I begin? For the last 2 years, my girlfriend, 20, has been living with me, 21M, and my family, been together for almost 4. She got into a big quarrel with her father and decided to leave. My mother, ever the kind hostess, volunteered to let her live with us. Of course, I consented, since I loved her. Loved. In a relationship, I've always felt a little envious, but not terribly jealous. I realize the title implies differently, but that was the only way to get to the truth. My suspicions initially surfaced about a year ago while playing the board game Codenames with my sister, 24, her boyfriend, 24, and the cheating BE, let's call her Stacy. Stacy and my sister's boyfriend were on the same squad, and I didn't like the vibe they were putting off straight immediately. He was mocking her about some mess, as she was giggling at all of his jokes. It all seemed a little too flirty to me, and I wasn't having any of it. That night, I told her about it, and she said it was nothing. Without a doubt. During this period, I was attending school and working as a, so I was out of the home the most of the time. Some days, I didn't get home until after midnight. My parents, as well as my sister, worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. My girlfriend only worked on weekends and did her schoolwork online. My sister's boyfriend works in construction, but he has a 2-week on, 2-week off schedule. Stacy and my sister's boyfriend spent the most of the day at home alone. Since that board game night, my doubts have only grown. Stacy would no longer look at him while they were in the same room. They'd make infrequent small chat. I could sense that the nature of their relationship had shifted. I approached Stacy again, wondering why she was suddenly behaving so uneasy with him, and she said that it was because she didn't want to upset me. I felt horrible at this moment for making her feel guilty. I promised myself that I would never bring it up again, and I kept my word. Until 6 days ago, that is, I was resting down on the sofa in the living room upstairs. Stacy was preparing a smoothie in the kitchen, which was only partially visible from where I was. My sister's boyfriend walks downstairs and begins preparing lunch for himself. I couldn't see what they were doing, but I pretended not to notice as I held my phone up to my face. I could just make out their silhouettes in the rear door's glass reflection. They were moving around each other, each doing their own thing, when he smacks her a. I was frozen at the time. Every bit of me erupted. I got up from the sofa once my sister's boyfriend returned upstairs, walked to the front door, and put my shoes on. Stacy approaches me and asks, "Where are you going?" And I simply said, "Really? I watched what just occurred," I said as I walked away, slamming the door behind me. She rushed after me, becoming enraged and attempting to pretend as if nothing had occurred. I told her what I observed, which enraged her even more. A refraction. So you're admitting you didn't even notice it at the time. You believed you saw it, and you wanted to see it in order to support your beliefs. She's threatening to end our relationship at this point. She's announcing her intention to move out and live on her own, making me feel bad by claiming she's broke and will have to drop out of school to work full-time in an job. I apologized, as much as I wanted to terminate it all and let her leave at this point. I apologized profusely, begged her to remain, and swore never to bring it up again. It took a lot of persuasion, but she ultimately agreed to remain, and we strolled back to the home. But I was aware of what I was seeing. All I needed was strong proof. I purchased a little black concealed camera from Amazon the same night. When it came, I placed it in the living room near the kitchen at the corner of one of the drapes. When everyone was still sleeping the following morning, 2 days ago, I pulled out the chip, inserted it into the USB, and rapidly glanced through the film on my laptop. Nothing. I cleaned up the area and replaced the chip in the camera. Then, finally yesterday, I received what I desired. I awoke before everyone else and examined the chip. At 3:15 a.m., I saw my sister's boyfriend gently stroll downstairs and settle on the sofa. Stacy emerges from our room a few minutes later. I couldn't stand it any longer as she walked up to him and sat on his lap. I was really taken aback. The girl I spent 4 years with, the girl I believed I'd spend the rest of my life with. My sister's boyfriend is having an affair with me. All this time, you've been lying to me, making me feel terrible. I returned downstairs, roused Stacy, positioned the laptop in front of her, and began watching the movie. She immediately closed it and froze as she understood what was going on. For what seemed like an age, nothing was spoken. She began weeping, unable to speak until I eventually said, "You're the most devious, vile psychopath I've ever encountered. I'm going to send this to everyone you know if you don't start packing your ass. Right now, we're finished." What followed was a very lengthy, pitiful, awful excuse for an apology that I won't even get into. She eventually phoned her father, who came over and took her up, so I think she'll be living with her family again. A lot of her stuff is still here, and she doesn't have any friends to transport it to her. So I'm not sure what to do with it all. My sister's boyfriend, on the other hand, has been booted out of the home and now has his own apartment someplace. Who knows, maybe Stacy may move in with him. I don't care story 2. I got cheated on by my lover. I've been married to my hubby for 6 years. I'm the happy I've ever been, but it wasn't always this way. We had a dead end in our relationship a few years ago. It was expected and tedious. Our squabbles were never ending, and I felt invisible and unheard. This lasted around a year. Then, out of nowhere, I received a phone call from an old buddy. We'll refer to him as Tommy. I'd known Tommy for around 10 years, give or take, and although he wasn't anything extraordinary at the time, I'd use him as a diversion now and again. But I hadn't seen or heard from him in approximately 4 years, so his phone call came as a wonderful surprise. We spoke for almost an hour. It's just like old pals catching up. This was something we did every day for about a month. I found myself missing his discussions, and before I realized it, missing him. Of course, I tried my hardest to resist it. I even cut off any contact between us. But the longer I was gone, the stronger the impulses were, and my husband was unable to fulfill them. Finally, I confided in my spouse about my dissatisfaction in the hopes that things would change. Instead, we fought. That was all the justification I needed to contact Tommy, and I was in complete pleasure for the next year. He was my drug, and every moment I had, every chance I was given, I went going to get another hit. Tommy consumed every thought I had. I adored him. Just saying his name made me happy. But I was married, and no matter how much I loved Tommy, I couldn't leave my husband. Tommy seemed to be on board with the plan until the day he handed me an ultimatum. It had to be him or my spouse. He was sick of sneaking around since he couldn't go out on dates, not being able to meet my relatives or visit my home. I'm sick of seeing photos of myself and my hubby on social media. I lied because I didn't want to lose him. For almost a month, he believed the lie, but then I noticed he texted me less and less. Sometimes he doesn't react to me for days on end. When questioned, he made some bogus reason that I always believed. He did this vanishing and reappearing routine for a few months before eventually telling me he was experiencing a nervous breakdown. I wanted to be there for him and help him in any way I could. He assured me that all he needed to do was check himself into a facility and he'd be okay. He said he'd get back to me in a few days. I waited, worried. I was continuously checking all of his social media accounts. Unfortunately, that was the only way I could see into his life by design, but it provided me nothing. He wasn't publishing anything. We had a few common acquaintances, but I wasn't sure whether they were aware of what he was going through, so I didn't include them. I simply sat there waiting. When I was preparing to check one of his accounts 2 weeks later, I saw one of our mutuals had tagged him in a post. However, the tag was not highlighted. So I looked up his name and he was no longer there. The same goes for all of his other accounts. I reasoned that he had to be alive. All of his social media profiles had been active for many hours. With that in mind, I texted him, no response. I created a new account after finally concluding that he had ghosted me. I searched his name, and there he was with a fresh profile picture captioned, "I did a thing." As I examined the picture of Tommy on a beach with a lady dressed completely in white, both clutching a marriage certificate, my heart dropped to my stomach. I discovered a few months later that he began seeing her a month after he urged me to leave my husband and married 2 days after he told me he was admitting himself into a hospital. So, while I was worrying about him, hoping and praying that he was well, He was on his honeymoon, partying it up on a beach. I eventually grew out of it. I'm really laughing about it now.